Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 4 of text mining. This week, we're going over sentiment analysis. So this first video is just going to be kind of an overview. What is sentiment analysis and how do we perform it? And then there's going to be two other videos. One is going to be for people that want to use Python, and one is going to be for people that want to try out Orange, which is a I don't want to say non-technical, but it's a no code option. I've been playing around with it and wanted to kind of introduce it. I think you'll like it, hopefully. But yeah, let's get started. So far this term, we've gone over kind of the introduction. So let's get our environment set up. What do we need to know about text? So getting to understand what kind of research problems can we solve with this? What kind of business problems? And then we started talking about ethical considerations. Now that comes up quite a bit in text because if you think about something like grocery store data versus text data, what I buy from the grocery store is the data that comes out is pretty minimal. It's what did I buy? How much did I spend? When did I buy it? So really plain things. Still a lot of data, still a lot about me, but not so much personal information. Now, if you instead took my reviews of every grocery store item I bought this week, that would be a little bit different because that would give you a little bit more insight of how I feel about them. What did I use those items for grocery wise? Um, so that's why with text, we have so much more ethical just dilemmas that come up because text can be much more personal. In module 2, we covered web scraping. So you got data from websites, brought it down and kind of figured out how to play around with it. And in module 3, that was a really big one. We spent a lot of time going over vectorizers, stemming and lemmatization, stop words, custom replacement, so like dictionaries. And we spent a lot of time on that because, as you've probably learned, if we're doing analysis, we need to have good data. Garbage in, garbage out is the common saying. So if we have garbage data, our analysis is not going to be very good. So we spend a lot of time cleaning the data and getting it ready, massaging it so that when we do our analysis, we are ready to go with really good data. So for module 4, a few things we're going to learn about dictionaries. So how can dictionaries help us with sentiment analysis? We've done a little bit of dictionaries already, so that part's going to be very brief, but more just understanding how does that relate to sentiment. We're going to describe factors one should consider when selecting or building a dictionary for sentiment analysis. You all are going to be using pre-made methods for sentiment analysis, but you can kind of understand what nuances there are going to be. And then we're going to describe how dictionary-based methods may be used to measure concepts other than positive and negative sentiment. So essentially understanding that we can use dictionaries for many, many things in text mining because it's our way of labeling things. So dictionaries. We talked about that in the data cleansing module where we were replacing, I think it was like New York with NY, so that every time we saw new, we understood that it was NEW, new, and it wasn't part of New York, versus now NY was all the times that New York was in the data set. It's like a find and replace tool. So we are finding certain words or phrases, phrases work just as well, and we're going to replace it. The big thing to know is which way you want to do it. So what words do you want to replace with other words and what order to do that in. Sorry, my chair is sliding around. One thing I've learned the hard way with dictionaries is that if you do dictionaries ever, they always run in order of how you write them. So for example, I had one where I wanted I wanted male to be something else because I wanted to mark it as a gender identity. It was, long story short, it was for a job description type project, and I was looking at what the area of focus for the nonprofit was. So a lot of them work on like women's issues. So I was trying to point out male or men issues just to show the comparison. And I learned that if I have male, MALE, it replaced every instance of male. I think it was with boy. I wanted it to be very specific. But it did that even within words. So like female was now FEBOY. Um, oh, what was the other one? Some other word had male, MALE in it, and it just kept replacing that. So dictionaries are very good. You also do have to be careful that you are not replacing parts of words, and you're not kind of doing anything funky that will mess up your data set. So that's just kind of the FYI with dictionaries. As with everything in Python, do it one step at a time and don't be afraid to go back and fix it. But just kind of know dictionaries, they're for a one-to-one change. So I want to change all of this one word to this other word. And it's really helpful because we can then normalize our data set. The example I keep using is, I always use Arrowhead Stadium, but I guess now Lucas Oil Stadium. We could change every instance of Lucas Oil to Stadium so that no matter if they said Lucas or Lucas Oil or Stadium, we knew that that was the stadium that we were talking about. Same thing, I did one with the Manchester Arena. I changed that to like Mank Arena so that every time I saw Manchester, I knew it was talking about Manchester, the city, the location, and not the arena, because the arena was going to have that special replacement. And that's all I just talked about. It's the applications of that. Lucas Oil to Stadium. You can make things specific words. So if you have some words that you want to take out, you can always just replace it with a blank space or replace it with another word. You can create categories within the data. So for example, if you see, let's see, oh, I did the one with Zelensky. So I changed Ukrainian president to Zelensky. So that way we understood how often he was coming up in the news and not just whether we called him Zelensky or Mr. President or whatever. We always knew it was him. Assigning specific number to a term. So this is where we get into sentiment. Some sentiment analysis methods use more AI, more data-driven methods to say this is positive or negative. One of the ones I'm going to show you is the HL, and I always forget what it stands for, HL sentiment, but it actually has a literal dictionary of these are all of the positive words and this is how positive they are. And this is all the negative words. The text data set for that is on Brightspace if you want to check it out. The issue with that is that we have our set text file and that's all we can use, and it doesn't add words. But the good thing is that we always know how positive or negative a word is. It's not going to change over time. It's a straight dictionary where I look up amazing, and it's always going to have that same sentiment. Now, speaking of sentiment, that's where we get to understand the general feeling, the emotion behind text. And now, almost always, we're talking about positive and negative emotion. We are still trying to figure out the other types of emotion. Sometimes that comes out in other methods, but this general method, we're talking positive and negative. And then all of the methods work slightly differently. Some of them count up positive and negative, and just whichever one outweighs the other, that's what the sentiment is. Some of them do, like the one I just told you about, how positive. So it might be really, really positive, really, really negative, kind of in the middle. It'll just add all of those up. And if it's above 0, it's positive, below 0, it's negative, and 0 is neutral. Sometimes it looks at the proportion of positive and negative terms. If we look at the English text, most words are going to be neutral. So by counting up how many positive and negative we find, we can generally tell the sentiment. And then we can also customize this based on our business context. The one I always use, again, Kansas City, so hopefully, I know the Colts have not been as good, sorry. But for Kansas City, our stadium, it's supposed to be loud. It's known as one of the loudest stadiums in the US. So loud, when we see that in reviews, that's really, really good. When I was trying to make a practice data set for you all using reviews from Bonji's, because I checked out Bonji's for the first time. It was awesome. But one of the Perkinsville pork that they have, I saw a lot of reviews saying it was huge. Now, sometimes huge is good, sometimes huge is bad, but if we're Bonjis, we're gonna say, oh, that's good. They understand that it's big portions. That's kind of how we go off of. Um, when I did this kind of analysis with Sprint, um, one of the things, yeah, Sprint, like the old telecom, again, that was in Kansas City, no longer with us. But at Sprint, we looked at reviews and we often saw things like dropped calls. And in other contexts, dropped is maybe a little negative, but not really important. For telecom, if we're talking about call quality, dropped is really negative. That's a really bad thing to happen. So we had custom words where if someone says a call was dropped, we knew right away that was really bad. So those are a couple examples. As you start to look through data sets, you're going to find other ones that are really common. One thing I saw in our BBC News one is ceasefire. Now, ceasefire is usually, I would say, good with some negative connotations that there was violence to be ceased. But it's one that has probably come up more in the news recently. So if you think about it, old dictionaries might not have that as positive or negative. So maybe we add that in, and maybe we add in specific things where it was, if we see that there is a ceasefire, it's good. Or if we see there's one example where the ceasefire, I can't remember which country it was in, it was a smaller one. It was, they didn't agree on terms or something. So we needed to know that that was actually a negative thing. But again, our dictionaries might not be up to speed. So some common dictionaries, AFIN and HL are the ones that I've seen the most. Vader is coming up though. Vader is starting to become more popular, I'd say. There's tons of other ones as well. These are just the ones I've seen the most personally. So AFIN, oh, I got them actually mixed up. AFIN is one where the words are sentiment values from -5 to 5. So the values closest to +5 are really, really positive, closest to -5 are very negative, and all the way in between. HL is the one, that's the one that has the text files on Brightspace, and it's just a list of positive and negative words. And then there's Vader, which stands for Valence Aware Dictionary and Sentiment Reasoner, but that's part of NLTK, and it tries to find the context of the word, so not just the words itself, but how they're used. So it's a little bit more sophisticated when it comes to sentiment analysis. But in general, these are types of algorithms. So what we're going to do is the things that we've already done. We get our data set, we prep it, we get it all ready, and we're going to run it through these sentiment dictionaries, these algorithms. And the output is that we're going to see either a score, so negative is negative, positive is positive, 0 is neutral, or it's actually going to tell us positive or negative. As you'll see, there are many times it is incorrect. This is sentiment analysis is one of the most commonly used and also, I would say, immature almost methods of analysis. It has a lot of ways to go. It's a good starting point. It is not particularly sophisticated and it is often wrong. So this is like I said, a good starting point for analysis. So one example is this one. Let me move my Zoom screen. So who is responsible for this app? It is terrible and not stable. So if you read that, you got that review at your job, you would know that's pretty negative. They're not happy. You'll actually notice though, so AFIN looks at responsible, terrible, and stable. It adds those up and says, oh, it's actually positive. They use more positive than negative. HL looks at the specific terms. And so if it's not on, or if it's not in the dictionary, it doesn't add it. So we have negative for terrible, positive for stable, and then it ends up as neutral. So this is an example of when it doesn't quite work the way we wanted to. So we can read it and say this is probably negative, but these two dictionaries say maybe it's positive, maybe it's neutral. And I'm showing you the bad examples for some reason. There are lots of ways that it actually works really well. This is a similar one. The company's liability accounts show no significant or no signs of significant risk, We know that's neutral, maybe positive, but these ones counted it up as negative. What I found interesting, I was actually on TikTok the other day and I saw one that I immediately was like, this is the perfect example for sentiment analysis. It's this poor person that was in France. They had no service and they were mad at Verizon. So you see the little text they added up there. Day 2, running around France with no service, exclamation mark. Thank you, Verizon, exclamation. I point that out because the exclamations might be added to a dictionary at some point that says, hey, that's positive. She also put, am I still paying $10 a day? ... question mark, RIP international plan. So a few things here. Thank you, Verizon. That's clearly sarcastic. We know that's sarcastic. A sentiment dictionary would not know that. They would say, oh, great, they're thanking us. That's positive. RIP, so RIP international plan. That is slightly newer slang. The fact that I know it means it's probably been around a while, but I'll say new-ish slang. It's not going to be in the dictionaries that we have currently as something bad. It's going to be neutral, maybe just nothing. So unless we fix that and add it ourselves, it might not understand that this is not so great. And then the ... question mark, am I still paying $10 a day? That's implying more like frustration, like, are you kidding me? But if a sentiment dictionary was looking at this, it honestly might ignore the punctuation. It might not understand that this is like, hey, are you kidding me? Come on. So in essence, like this is a perfect example of one where if Verizon was scraping the web for times that it was mentioned, it would see this as maybe a positive. Clearly it's negative. So just some examples of when it doesn't quite work as well. Again, there are lots of examples on when it works perfectly, but just kind of know that this method isn't always 100% accurate. And it requires a lot of data cleansing and the manipulation of the sentiment dictionaries themselves. So we might have to physically change out some words. If there's a lot of slang, maybe we change the slang for something else, or maybe we add the slang to our dictionaries to make them a little bit more modern. So with that, that is sentiment analysis. Again, there are going to be 2 other videos, one for the code walkthrough and one for our new tool, Orange. With that, have a fantastic week. I'm stalling so I can pause the recording. All right, thank you all. Bye.